Good evening. I wanted to talk to you folks tonight about the Hairyman cave paintings and how they pertain to the legends of Bigfoot, the local lore, and how the native people refer to these things and see these things. And it also quite coincidentally happens to be the same area that I go Bigfooting in. I happen to drive right through this Indian reservation on the way up to the property where I do my Bigfooting. And I have a couple more trips planned this fall. And it's always very fascinating to me, these cave paintings and how they pertain to Bigfoot and how the Native Americans saw them and how they interpret to this day and some of the legends and a lot of the things and people fear and different ideas about Bigfoot that people have today. And it kind of goes way back. And California has a really rich history of Bigfoot sightings. Bluff Creek, way up north, where the infamous Patterson-Gimlin's filmed, all the way down toward the San Diego border, down by the Mexico border. There's been reports of Bigfoot with the Zoobies, all the way through the San Gregorio Mountains, the Idlewild Mountains, the Big Bear Mountain Range, going on all the way up through the Sierra Nevadas. Now, this particular Hairyman cave painting is a rock outcropping, kind of a shelter in the middle of an Indian reservation in central California. And it's kind of in a hotspot area in the Sierra Nevadas of where a lot of Bigfoot sightings are. It's just a stone throws away from where Ron Moorhead recorded his Sierra sounds. It's just a stone throw away, about a half hour, 45-minute drive from the property where I've had a bunch of encounters, and there's been a lot of sightings over the years. And here's a missing 4-in-1 map. It's a bit distance more, but not too far away from Yosemite National Park, where there's been a lot of disappearances, a lot of strange things, where people have seen Bigfoots, people have gone missing, people have even seen Dogman and those weird nightcrawler creatures, and the whole Sierra Nevada area just has a lot of weirdness with it. So the cave paintings themselves are estimated between 500 and 1,000 years old. There are even some reports and some scholars think that they go back really far, even farther than that. And it's quite interesting because you see pictographs of birds and bears and centipedes and other things in this cave. And then you come across these very striking pictures of these large humanoid objects with these very bright eyes. Now, it's a little hard to see because there's been a lot of graffiti and other modern day stuff, but they've done efforts to clean it up, and they've done recreations of it, and they've done improvements. Now, it is on an Indian reservation, and you do have to have permission, and I think you have to do an offering and get a blessing from the chief, which is completely understandable. So you can't just go up there in an afternoon and go see it. You have to make special arrangements. Someday I would love to go see it. It's always been incredibly fascinating to me, and I guess if you're really into the Bigfoot world, it's kind of a big deal to go see these, and I think it's absolutely amazing because you see pictures, like I said, of centipedes and lizards, and then there appears to be this whole hairy man family. There appears to be a large one that looks like a large male. You seem to have a smaller one that appears to be a female. Then you even have pictures of what appears to be a baby hairy man. And the Thule Indians that are there today say that these are representations of what they call the hairy man, which they equate to the modern day Sasquatch or Bigfoot. To them, it's just another known creature. They're rare, maybe like a mountain lion or seeing a bear, but they know they're out there, and historically they've always known that they've been there. So for them to show up in a cave painting is just a representation of the animals and the history around them. And the hairy man legend himself is very interesting because they say, don't go out at night, the hairy man will get you. We hunt during the day, they hunt at night. The hairy man is known to abduct kids. And here's a picture of a baby or a young child hairy man, I guess, of a family. But yeah, they have stories of the native women being carried off. Don't go out at night, especially if you're a woman. Don't go out by yourself, or hunters going missing. And there's even some stories of, you kind of leave them alone and they kind of leave us alone, and they have their hunting territories, and a very respectful but kind of standoff relationship. And it's very interesting because if you go 2,000 miles north into Canada, the Kwakwak Ewok Indian tribes and a lot of other tribes up there, they have a lot of the same type of beliefs. Like here you're seeing a representation of the Zunigwa, or the, hope I'm saying that right, the wild woman of the woods. And she basically ran around with a wicker basket collecting naughty children, kids that were misbehaving from their parents or staying out late at night, not doing their homework, disobeying people, or playing hooky from school and screwing around in the woods. You got to be careful. The Zuniko, the big hairy wild woman of the woods, will carry you off in a wicker basket on her back and take you back and eat you. And it just seems that there's a, I think a lot of it is kind of how people have modern day ideas of, oh, be careful, the boogeyman will get you, and kind of the whole wood booger thing in the South. But to me, it's kind of the same thing. Oh, beware, the hairy man will get you. Just like how bears are cool, but they should be respected. Mountain lions should be respected. The same thing with the hairy man or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them. They should be respected. And I think it's also kind of a neat way to, keep your kids in at night and to keep them from screwing around in the woods. So the topography around the area, especially around the Indian reservation, is very what you'd expect for California. I think it's awesome. I spent my whole life here, grew up here. So you're expecting very warm, kind of dry summers with lots of rolling hills and grassland, and the more wet areas around rivers and tributaries being a lot more greener, like a riparian, and then seeing scattered oak trees. And then as you get up, you start getting into mixed oak and some pine trees, and then eventually you get up into redwoods. When you drive up there towards this area, you pass by Lake Success, and it's a reservoir lake and kind of a marshland there. Last few years it was really getting low, but we had some good rains 2 years ago and some rains this last year, so it's refilled quite a bit. But as you can see, it's just kind of rolling grasslands and grazing lands. Here's another picture of the lake. You can see the road there on the right that takes you back up towards the mountains, basically towards Sequoia National Park and the Sequoia National Forest. The roads basically just go right up to it. This is through Porterville and towards Springville. And as you get a little higher up, you get to a few thousand feet, you start getting into, like I said, more grasslands and scrub oaks, and just a lot more varied. I mean, there's everything up there. There's bears, mountain lions, bobcats, deer, tons of squirrels, ground squirrels, tree squirrels, a million types of birds and buzzards and hawks. It's very, very active, lots of prey, lots of things going on. And eventually, when you get to a certain elevation, about 5,000 or 6,000 feet, you kind of break through, and everything turns lush, and everything gets green, and there's ferns and plant life, and you start getting into the giant sequoias. And all these areas have history of Bigfoot and Sasquatch sightings. The higher areas in the sequoias get very cold, get a lot of snow, and I'm sure they move down to lower elevations. In the summertime, where it's cooler, I'm sure they move back up through here. When you're walking through these woods and you're going around these little lakes and these humongous trees the size of a semi-truck, the size of a house around, you feel like you're in a squatchy area, to kind of use that term. You feel like this would be such great habitat, because even in like September, October, the driest parts of the year, there's still some running streams, there's still water in the lake, you still see lots of wildlife, and it's just absolutely gorgeous up there, even in the hottest, driest part of the year, where you go down the hill and it's 90 degrees and super dry. You come up here and it's quite a bit cooler. So you can just envision, what you think of Sasquatch territory. This is pretty much ideal. And like I said, they can move down into the warmer, drier parts different times of the year. And there's tons of deer all through these grasslands, tons of livestock, lots of pasture up there. You don't see much dairy farms. It's mostly meat for lots of cattle. You see lots of goats. You see lots of stray cats and dogs running around. It's just such a lush area, even going lower down and going back up through here. It just supports so much life and so much habitat. And there's also a lot of really neat native traditions. Like part of this on the way up is called Battle Mountain. I guess there was a big cavalry battle, kind of the whole haunted Indian burial ground thing, reports of orbs. I've heard tree knocks all through here, and this is where I've had a couple of my encounters. And there's just so much going on. There's just so much rich history. And then to have the right down below nearby to have the Hairyman cave painting, it's just absolutely cool, and their tradition of the Hairyman, and it kind of just fits it all together. So here's a picture of one of my paranormal heroes, Loren Coleman. If you don't know who Loren Coleman is, well, you're probably just starting out or you've been living under a rock. He's got the Cryptozoology Museum in Maine, in Portland, Maine. It's quite a ways away from California, but I got to get out there one of these days. I'd love to do a tour and a walkthrough and ask him some questions. And as you can see, he's got the tattoo of the Hairyman cave painting on his arm there. I've seen a couple people with this tattoo, and it's actually pretty cool. My wife would probably kill me, but I'd love to get a tattoo of it as well. So on that note, folks, I just want to let you guys know that there's a reason people go missing in the woods. There's a reason why the native people say, watch out for the hairy man. And like any other creature, like any other human being, like any other animal, whatever you want to classify it, it's very capable of being dangerous. So be careful of the hairy man. Just be careful in the woods in general. There's a lot of other things besides Bigfoot out there. And I just think it's quite fascinating. So stay safe in the woods, folks. If you can, please give this video a like, a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. Thank you.